What's good, friends list, episode 111 of the Gamecast coming at you. The summer of gaming shows is slowly starting to creep to an end, and it looks like Microsoft is getting set to cap off the summer with a new showcase at this year's Gamescom. So, this week, we look at what Microsoft might have up their sleeves for us at the upcoming event, including new looks at previously announced first-party titles, new reveals of third-party games, and much more. Could we potentially see new info on Halo Infinite, including its next flight? Maybe a new dev diary from the crew at Ninja Theory? We break down what the forecast could look like. Also, more departures coming out of Blizzard, including Diablo 4's director. Dead Space may be coming sooner than you think, and much, much more coming up on the newest jam-packed episode of the Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and, of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, of course, be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz that I tell you every week wherever you get a podcast at. And, of course, if we're not on a service that you use frequently, let us know. Let me know. We'll take care of it. We'll get on there. Make sure you can listen to our beautiful voices, as I'm sure exactly you want to hear my buttery, beautiful voice. I don't know. I guess buttery would be a good descriptor of a voice to have with, like, radio podcasting. I don't fucking know. Smooth jazz voice, you know? I don't know. Anyways, though, and as always, follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. As always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my co-pilot, my partner in crime, the dynamic duo back in action, as always, Mike P-Pack. Mike, as always, my friend, what's good? What's going on? And what have you been playing? And, of course, once again, talking about Back 4 Blood last week. Going to be getting into Back 4 Blood again this weekend. So, obviously, got that to look forward to. But, catch me up. You know what? Catch me up a little bit on your thoughts with Back 4 Blood, since we got to tackle that finally last week and throughout the weekend. And, obviously, getting to do so as well again this weekend coming up. What you're kind of looking for and what your impressions are as somebody who has loved the Left 4 Dead franchise for so long.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with what they what they put together with Back 4 Blood. I think the thing that struck me the most and the thing that made it the biggest impression on me is just the gunplay in the game in general. I feel like it's very smooth. I will say it's a little like ADS-y, like aim down sights. It's a little bit more like Call of Duty than a previous iteration of a Left 4 Dead game. Reason being is with Valve games, you're mostly you're not really going to be aiming down sights all that much unless you have a scope or something of the sort. You're pretty much always going to be aiming with a crosshair, like in CS. So I will say that was quite a bit it was very interesting. Not anything that's like too crazy. I thought it was really smooth, really snappy to aim down sights and fire. I was impressed with some of the unique characters. We kind of talked about it. Some of like the special infected are really interesting. I do miss some of the old classics, but with something like this where you're kind of stuck with what you can kind of do because things are trademarked and things of that nature. I was really impressed with what they came together. I thought the versus mode was really enjoyable. Overall, the game ran pretty good for a beta. There was a little bit of server side lag. The one campaign that we played through, I played through once with Adam before, and it was really smooth. So I don't know if they were just having some server overload or issues, whatever the case is. It was pretty negligible. There was some obvious problems with it, but it's nothing that was too crazy. Outside of that, I'm curious and excited to see, how the game plays for real whenever it's full release.
Mhm.
I know when I booted up the game for the first time and got into the firing range, and I was really impressed and was just like, wow. Started to, salivate a little bit because it just was so smooth and everything worked so well.
Mhm.
So I want to take my hat off to Turtle Rock. What they have thus far, as far as a beta, is really impressive, and I'm excited to see. And again, I mean, when a beta is released this close to full release, which is coming in October, I mean, you're talking about a game that's pretty much finished. And, I'm just excited to see what the full finished product does wind up looking like, because right now I'm liking everything I'm seeing from them. And I can't wait to sink some serious time into this game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. I was really thoroughly impressed with just the overall presentation and design of this game. I was really kind of hesitant on the card system and things like that played into it, because to me, sometimes that gets a little too much in the weeds for mechanic wise. I like, deck building card games like, Hearthstone and Elder Scrolls Legends and things like that. Gwent, like, I do enjoy those games, but I also don't necessarily like whenever elements like that are added to, how do I want to say this? Games that typically don't, and some of the best games that you can find out there are games that, from a mechanic standpoint, I don't want to say two wrongs make a right or whatever, but two things that are polar opposites sometimes do come together to really complement each other. Like, think of, for example, Splitgate, another game that we've been playing recently. Obviously, you're mashing up Halo and Portal in that together, and it works really well to an extent from a gameplay perspective. It's such a, unique added element that complements it pretty well overall. But to me, sometimes I always worried about, like, when I saw they were having a card element to it, I was like, that could kind of reek of microtransactions. That can kind of reek of, a lot of different elements that are more chance-based than anything. But after getting in and kind of playing it and getting hands-on with it and understanding how that system works now, like, to me, that kind of went out the window. I felt very comfortable. It felt very natural to get in there and use that system. And kind
especially because, like, they, not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, man.
Especially because they were like, people might want to hear a little bit about, because it's not going open beta until, I mean, it'll be open beta for 2 days after, or for 2 days once this releases.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you and I got access when other people didn't, because we were technically in the closed beta section of it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really tasteful how they did the card system, and it kind of slipped my mind until you made the comment. And then the thing that really dawned on me was, like, the pre-mades in the verses, because people might be concerned about how maybe it could get pay to win in the versus, like,
Mm-hmm.
side of things. But I was really impressed with how they just made pre-made decks where it's like, hey, these are the decks available to you. Pick one of the roles, you know what I mean? Which I thought was really cool.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, it definitely made me feel much more, okay, I'm not going to get, if I don't invest an additional $60 into this game, I'm not going to get left in the dust.
Right.
To me, that was really reassuring of this game, because, it could be a game that we're already seeing not go free to play, but it's included on Game Pass day one at release. That's, and granted, they're getting a big check from Microsoft, I'm sure, to compensate, that loss of sales, quote unquote loss of sales. But at the same time, though, there is an ease of access to this game more so. But luckily, it not being free to play yet, there isn't that element of needed, hey, we got to support this game somehow in terms of, financially or whatnot. In other ways that isn't a upfront price tag like a Fortnite, and so many other Warzone, so many other free to play games, juggernauts out there. But to me, though, it really does stick out as, okay, Valve isn't going to do anything with this franchise. Cool, we'll do our own thing, and we'll do our own twist on it. And it's enough that it is very, very much, 75% Left 4 Dead, where you feel the bones and the structure of that game and the spirit of that game that you want out of it. That's the experience I want out of this. But at the same time, there's enough uniqueness to it that it stands on its own. I think so far, obviously, we haven't played the final build or anything like that, and we're, obviously relatively early into the beta phase of it still. But at the same time, it's still a game that I think so far works really well. From what we played from a preview build of this game, I think it very much works in it's achieving so far what it set out to be. I would at least think so far. Outside of that, on my end, with obviously with us playing Back for Blood, that was the big thing. But also too, you and I have been playing a little bit of Splitgate as well.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping back into it, we played it at launch when the beta originally launched 2 years ago, almost. Oh well, over 2 years now. Had a decent amount of positive things to say about it then. But now, obviously, getting a much more complete experience, a much more polished experience, and much more an experience that's set up for once this thing does launch in a full state here relatively soon. It has the structure to hopefully find success long term with a lot of aspects of it. So I've really been enjoying my time with it. It's a good, obviously it's not, exactly what I want, but it's scratching that Halo itch that I'm wanting for while we wait, obviously, for Infinite to come. It's hitting all the right notes in that to at least, bide me over until we finally get to play that game again with the next flight, or obviously when it fully releases. But I've been having a blast with it from when we do play. Yeah, there's the occasional game that does piss me off, and there's occasional aspects of it that do get a little frustrating, like being able to just kind of sit halfway through portals and tag people and it's like, okay, you're kind of cheesing the system, but at the same time, how do you tackle that? And if it's part of the game,
that's why it's beta.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of stuff they got to work on. How can you balance those things out a little bit? But with it getting closer and closer to release, releasing later this month supposedly in a full state. Hopefully they get those things ironed out sooner than later. Before they head into that. But yeah, still really enjoying my time with it, nonetheless. But Mike, let's end the button mash before we head into the big topics of our episode, because we got a lot on button mash this week to kind of get through before we get to our main topics for this week. So if you're new to the show, Button Mash is where we run through our quick hit news for the week to get you caught up and set the stage before we head into our big topics to dive into a little bit deeper. But Button Mash, of course, we got to start off with Halo Infinite. Of course, got to start with Halo Infinite. It wouldn't be an Xbox show if we didn't talk about Halo at least at some point. But Halo Infinite will apparently require 97.24 gigabytes of storage space to download, according to a leaked image from the Microsoft Store. If that turns out to be true, Halo Infinite will be yet another Xbox exclusive that comes with a massive bloated file size, and it's something that's becoming a real point of contention on the Xbox Series X and S. A quick look at some of Microsoft's first-party exclusives show a worrying trend. Gears of War 5 takes up 101.5 gigabytes, Forza Motorsport 7 takes 98.6 gigabytes, Halo 5 Guardians gobbles up 98.8 gigabytes, Forza Horizon 4 requires 86.2 gigabytes, Halo the Master Chief Collection eats 103.9 gigabytes of space, and Flight Simulator takes up no less than 102 gigabytes. So it's interesting to see that maybe there's some compression issues going on with Microsoft, and even then, maybe that's with compression at this point. So, but we've seen Asobo Studios obviously hack that file size down big time with Flight Simulator. So it's going to be, I'm sure to an extent, it's going to take a little bit of time to get where they eventually need these games to go in terms of file sizes and whatnot too. And also too, they're developing for the hardware that is quote unquote the most powerful that's on the market right now. So there's a lot of higher end textures that are coming with that and whatnot. So we'll see. But that's interesting nonetheless that we're having another bloated Xbox first party title come out, nonetheless, one this big with Halo Infinite. Ninja Theory's critically acclaimed action-adventure game Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice was one of the most popular games released in 2017. If you have yet to experience it, developer Ninja Theory has released an optimized patch today on the Xbox Series X and S, updating a number of visual elements for new-gen consoles. The new update allows the game to take full advantage of Microsoft's 9th generation gaming hardware, meaning Hellblade not only gets improved basic visuals, but includes additional perks such as DirectX ray tracing and 3 graphical modes: performance, resolution, and enriched, which the latter mode offering support for ray tracing. If you own an Xbox copy digitally or physically, you will receive the update at no additional cost. The game is also available on Xbox Game Pass as well as Xbox Cloud Game. An optimization patch for the PC version of the game is currently in development, though there are no plans to bring this update to additional platforms at the moment. Microsoft is also working on a new night mode for Xbox consoles. The software giant has started testing this night mode with Xbox insiders in the alpha skip ahead ring today, and it allows Xbox owners to dim their screens, control their LED brightness, and even the Xbox power button. The night mode has a lot of customization, including different dimming levels and an optional blue light filter. Microsoft is also allowing Xbox users to dim LED brightness on their consoles in night mode and dim the Xbox power button light or turn it off completely. You can also set an Xbox to switch to the system dark mode and disable HDR when night mode is enabled. The Call of Duty League announced today that it will require attendees to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination at its upcoming 2021 championship weekend in Los Angeles, California. This marks the first major esports organization to require proof of vaccination in the wake of rising COVID-19 cases in the United States. Quote, "Our top priority is the health and safety of our fans, staff, and players. With the rising rate of COVID-19 cases in Los Angeles County, we are enhancing our safety measures for the Call of Duty League Championship weekend," the Call of Duty League Twitter said. Quote, "Effective immediately, all attendees will be required to show proof of vaccination or, if not fully vaccinated, a negative PCR or antigen test received within 72 hours of the day you attended. All attendees must wear a mask during their event, regardless of vaccination status," end quote. Reports claiming the Overwatch League esports tournament will go on a, quote, year-long hiatus are untrue, according to OWL Vice President John Spector. Esports site GG Recon published a story citing sources who claim that the Overwatch League, Activision Blizzard's Overwatch Esports League, will take a full year off for its 2022 season. The reasoning for the delay was claimed to have something to do with Overwatch 2, but Spector's tweet, which was sent to IGN when asked for comment, debunks this. So while the dates for the 2022 season haven't yet been announced, a year-long delay is not in the cards. Quote, "It's really not practical to respond to every rumor about our future plans, but in this case, this story isn't accurate. We have not set nor communicated dates about our 2022 season yet, but do not plan to take, quote, a year-long hiatus in any scenario we are considering currently," Spector tweeted. Splitgate, as we were talking about before, Mike, is going to get a next-gen upgrade according to 1047 Games. This news comes from a recent live stream where the developers performed a brief Q&A session with fans of the Portal/Halo style arena shooter. When asked near the end of the stream if Splitgate would see enhancements on the PS5 and Xbox Series X, CEO Ian Cardinal Soldier Prolox answered with a definitive yes. Quote, "We're going to do that. I'm not ready to share any specifics, but there's some obvious things that pretty much every game is going to do that we will explore doing as well," said Prolox. "We intend to have the PS5 and Xbox Series X/S versions out already. It's just been a matter of having 110% focus on servers as much as possible now." Deck9 announced today on Twitter that the official release date for Life is Strange Remastered Collection has been delayed and will now release sometime next year. In the tweet, Deck9 explains that due to the ongoing challenges of the pandemic, they have decided to, quote, alleviate any additional pressure on the team and have decided to push back Life is Strange Remastered Collection into 2022. Originally, Life is Strange Remastered Collection was supposed to launch on September 30th on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and Stadia, with the Nintendo Switch port coming at a later date. Deck9 still confirmed that the next installment of the series, Life is Strange True Colors, will still release on September 10th on all platforms previously announced. A collection of, quote, core staff from Typhoon Studios, one of the in-house game developers Google shut down earlier this year, are reforming under a new name. Announced in a company press release, the new Montreal-based studio, which will go by the name Raccoon Logic, will pick up where Typhoon left off. The new developer has also reclaimed the rights to his predecessor's acclaimed IP, Journey to the Savage Planet, as well. The wacky Soviet-era FPS Atomic Heart will have 2 playable endings, according to the development team at Mudfish. Spotted by WCCF Tech, Mudfish confirmed that Atomic Heart will contain 2 different endings in the recently updated FAQ section of the game's official Discord channel. According to the developer, the ending that a player receives is triggered based on a previous moral decision that they take. The FAQ reads, quote, "We've put an important moral choice in the hands of the players closer to the finale because we want to nudge the community to argue and discuss about the themes that we have laid out in the story. We want you to draw your own conclusions and make your own decisions, not being influenced by forces from above." Stardew Valley, a game that I love really well, the wonderful game that combines farming simulator with RPG mechanics, will officially be released on Xbox Game Pass in fall 2021. Revealed during this week's Twitch gaming showcase, ID at Xbox Stream, Stardew Valley is just one of many new games headed to Xbox Game Pass, along with Origami 2, Evil Geniuses 2, and Paparazzi. Back for Blood developer Turtle Rock Studios, as we were just talking about, has confirmed that the game will not include a campaign versus mode, a popular feature from its spiritual predecessor, Left 4 Dead. Turtle Rock made the announcement on the Back for Blood Discord, first spotted by Eurogamer. Quote, "We do not have any plans to have a campaign versus mode at this time," Turtle Rock said. When asked why the feature wasn't in Back for Blood, Turtle Rock co-founder and design director Chris Ashton said, quote, "We have a lot of defense equipment and our specials are good at ambushing. Defending worked far better for our game than running from A to B." Playground Games has revealed the full map for the upcoming racing title Forza Horizon 5, and as is tradition with the franchise, the map is massive. Forza Horizon 5 was announced less than 2 months ago, and since then Playground Games and Microsoft have been quite generous in doling out information for drivers excited to take the streets and off-road paths in Mexico. Today, the studio revealed the entirety of Forza Horizon 5's massive map on Twitter, and well, it speaks for itself. Forza Horizon 5 will see players driving through all sorts of biomes, named and unnamed locations, and more, of course. Despite positive reception for the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 and 2 remasters, a remaster of Modern Warfare 3, quote, "does not exist," according to a statement from Activision sent to Charlie and Intel. Quote, "A remaster of Modern Warfare 3 campaign or multiplayer does not exist. Any reports otherwise are incorrect," an Activision representative said in response to rumors of a Modern Warfare 3 campaign remaster. And finally, Mike, this is an odd one. A trailer for a canceled Duke Nukem game back from 2008 has surfaced online. The animation studio Janimation was hired by Gearbox at the time to create a cinematic for the game before the title was later scrapped by Gearbox, seemingly due to legal issues surrounding the franchise. Gregor Punchitz, an animator best known for his work on the monster character models in Doom, headed up making the trailer in 2008. The cinematic was recently released on Punchitz's YouTube channel and shows a brief look at what could have been for Duke Nukem Begins, a supposed origin story for the series lead. Acting as an origin story would make sense according to Duke Nukem Begins' timeframe. With work on the trailer taking place in 2008, Duke Nukem Begins would likely have been Gearbox's first entry into the FPS series. Instead, the studio launched with Duke Nukem Forever in June 2011 to mixed reception. At its time of release, IGN reviewed Duke Nukem Forever, scoring it a 5.5 out of 10, so that kind of shows you where it's at. And I played a little bit of that game. It was very bad. The mock-up trailer for Duke Nukem Begins, unlike the other entries in the Duke Nukem franchise, depicts the game as a third-person shooter with 4-player co-op. According to the trailer, the game would have looked to bring back a range of Duke's iconic weapons, including his signature pistol and the freeze ray, while also showing Duke beating enemies to death with his own arms. It's a very weird trailer. If you get a chance, go and look it up. It's definitely out there, and it is very, very, very mid to late 2000s, to say the least. So, Mike, after all of that, running through Button Mash, anything you want to run back before we head into our big topics for this week?
Yeah, I think a few things that just need to be talked about briefly. First and foremost, the Halo size news, I guess you could call it. Obviously, we see games getting bigger and bigger, especially with like Modern Warfare and Warzone and all that stuff. We've seen games just getting absolutely humongous in size, and it does concern me just because I know that when games come out that are newer, they have better graphics, they have new features, they're going to get bigger. But you're talking about completely filling up storage spaces on your consoles with only a few games. That's a little bit concerning, but I know people are going to say, or listeners are going to say, well, just buy an external hard drive. Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I think everyone hears you, but not everyone wants to juggle around external hard drives all the time to play their games. So,
and to keep in mind too, for Xbox Series X and S games, you can't.
Yeah, it's you can't right now, and it's supposed to be proprietary when it does come, so that's obviously less than ideal. But going forward from that, I'd like to just say congratulations to Turtle Rock and the devs over at Splitgate again. They've just done I'm thoroughly enjoying their games. I think they're just stellar. I am a little bit not disappointed or sad because it does make sense, and their explanation 100% hits the mark as far as Turtle Rock's reasoning for not making campaign versus. But I did thoroughly enjoy that that in the the Left 4 Dead series. So the versus now is a little bit more like, if you're familiar with it was called oh boy, what do they call it? In Left 4 Dead 2, when you ran around and grabbed the gas cans and dumped them into the generator.
Oh, that's gonna bug me now.
Yeah, it's similar to that anyway. So that's pretty cool. I do think that's at least interesting. I think their reasoning does make sense too. Like some of the special, it might be a little easy for human players to kind of, one of the old strategies in Left 4 Dead anyway was to, if you spawned as a boomer, you could go out, die instantly, come back as a hunter, and then you would have 2 hunters, a smoker, and actually, what would it be? It would, in Left 4 Dead 1, it would be 2 smokers, 2 hunters. In Left 4 Dead 2, it would be a spitter, 2 hunters, and a smoker. So you're talking about having 3 lockdown enemies at one point in time was a little bit tough to deal with for the survivors. So it all makes sense. And then the Splitgate team, I really have enjoyed Splitgate, playing it again. I did enjoy it back when it first came out, but it felt like there was a lack of support there. And then they get to $10 million endorsement, and we see what they've done with it. So kudos to both of those teams there at their heart for their hard work and dedication. And I think I've seen a lot of comments on Twitter about the decision of Activision to make people have proof of a negative test or vaccination to come to COD Champs. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's where the world and society is going, like it or not. I mean, I would like for people to get vaccinated because I've been vaccinated, but at the end of the day, as a constitutionalist to some degree, I kind of understand that people want to have a choice at certain things, but if you want to choose to not get the vaccination, that's fine, but you better show up with a negative test or whatever. So all that makes a whole lot of sense, and I think they're making the right decision. And the Overwatch League, $20 million franchise slots, by the way. So just want to say that, even though that was going around on Twitter, $20 million franchise slots, BT dubs.
$20 million franchise. Jesus Christ.
That's it. That's all it takes. You want to own a franchise in Overwatch League? Cough up 20 mil.
Yeah, I'll go dig through the couch cushions.
Yeah. And, with everything that's happening with Activision recently, I mean, I know they're obviously not going to lower the price because it's not fair for the other teams that have already invested. But, yeah, just chew on that one. That's whenever there's the meme where it's hard pills to swallow. Yeah. $20 million franchise fee, BT dubs.
Jesus Christ.
So we can have, Bill Cosby rooms and whatever else.
Yeah, logical things, normal things that people have, just, think that's logical to do in life, but, gotta love it. Nonetheless, though, yes, no, totally. And I totally agree with what you mean about the, COD League. And there is, I'm like you. I want everyone to get vaccinated. I completely, to the extent of, yes, from as a constitutionalist, like, I know what you mean, and I agree with that, where it's like, yes, there are basic human rights that we have and liberties that we do have. I don't think this necessarily fits the bill. I'm saying this in a nice way. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be, cordial. I don't think this necessarily, when it's scientifically, the data is backing up, hey, this is safe to take, hey, this is, this and that. And I'm sure we'll get flamed in the comments by somebody about it, but, tough shit. But as somebody who's getting married this year, hopefully, yet again, because we had to bump our wedding from last year to this year, like, I think people just want people to be safe. And I think that's a really hard pill for people to swallow for some reason, like you were saying, that I'm trying to pick my words very carefully. I'm trying to pick them very carefully in terms of, there's a reason why this all started, this hostility, that there's no point to be hostile. I think there's just, people feel a need to, whether they agree with what's going on or not, to just have an opposite opinion, just to have an opposite opinion when sometimes I don't think there needs to be one. And like it's always good to have differing opinions on things, but sometimes whenever it's forced, that doesn't make any sense. So before I go off into a whole different tangent, yes, I think that's the right thing to do. I think that's it's the logical thing to do, whether you believe it or not. There are people dying from this, and there are people who are still getting sick from this. This is still a real thing, and all everyone wants to be is safe. And, that's just how it is. And if you don't want to, cool. They're going to stream it on fucking every fucking platform imaginable because Activision wants all the views possible. So guess what? You can watch it from home. So if you don't want to go and do that, cool, watch it from home.
Yep.
Anyways, though, in terms of Halo Infinite, I do agree. I'm a little hesitant of those file sizes because, like you said, we're running out of space on these already. That was my biggest thing whenever, hey, we're going, all the next-gen consoles are going SSD routes, which, hey, that's great. But you're doing it with M.2 drives, which is even better. Those are great speeds that you're going to get. That's the latest tech with SSDs that you can use. They're still really expensive and really limited in terms of the amount of space you get for how much you spend compared to traditional SSDs. You're going to run into issues with that because they're trying to balance keeping the cost down for people to actually go out and buy these things, while also, too, though, at the same time, the easiest way to cut costs is to not really have a ton of space on there. So, to me, I mean, I was in the camp of these things need 2 terabyte hard drives right out the bat, because especially with something like the Series S and, obviously the Series X with it pushing more 4K textures and things like that, native 4K textures with high frames, like this thing wanting to use ultra settings out the gate, you're going to need all the space you can get on these, especially with the emphasis on digital games with Xbox Game Pass. Like, that's where I'm kind of getting, as these games keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and hopefully, too, with Halo, with it being really a double-edged sword in terms of offering 2 different sides of the coin, with it being 2 different experiences of campaign and multiplayer, which it's always been, but this much more line in the sand of, hey, this is Halo as a platform, you're downloading, the multiplayer is free to play, you can play that as much as you want, hey, you could buy in and buy the campaign. Like, they're 2 separate things, it feels like, more or less, under one umbrella, more so a platform. But hopefully you'll be able to kind of maybe wax down that, file size a little bit by, hey, I'm only doing multiplayer, or hey, I'm only doing campaign for some reason. Hey, I'm only sticking to one of these. So, you could save maybe some file size there, or some space on your SSD, but even then it's like, it's just getting into really, really tricky territory. And that's where I say, like, these things to me should have had 2 terabytes right off the bat. They should have figured out a way, or they should have not used, M.2s. They should have went with a more, traditional style SSD that is SATA powered. And granted, obviously not still as fast as in M.2, but it's a hell of a lot faster than a traditional hard disk drive. So, it's just gonna be, we're gonna run into this problem, and especially on the Xbox side, as it becomes as the proprietary portable SSD that you can get to buy to plug into the back of the console, like that memory card, it's not going down in cost anytime soon, and it's just we haven't seen it go down. I think it's still like $200. Like, dude, no, like it's just gonna get into a problem because, like I said, you can't play your Series X games on an external hard drive of, a standard hard disk drive. Like, you can't. So it's going to be, hopefully they are able to make that work in the future. And, hey, we just can't do, we can't promise super high frame rates, or we can't promise, Series X versions of these games, but you could still play a, base version of this game. Cool. But still, it's going to be a pain in the ass. So, Mike, let's head into our big topics for this week. So, got a couple of them. I want to kind of kick off with, it'll be more of a backloaded episode, I think, a little bit. But I do want to at least get in the conversation around Gamescom. Microsoft announced earlier this week that, hey, we're doing, which a lot of people, I think, were expecting to a degree. Hey, we're going to do a showcase, one more showcase this summer in this time, obviously, Gamescom, which Gamescom, if you're not familiar with, is, I want to say it's the E3 equivalent in Europe, but it is much, much, much bigger than E3, like in terms of the amount of people who usually go. Obviously, COVID and everything has, pulled that back, but it's still a hugely, hugely, hugely popular event. It just doesn't get the amount of press coverage in the US, obviously, because it's not US based. It's in Germany, odd hours that stuff's going on at. It is what it is. But it's a hugely, hugely, hugely big event within the games industry. And obviously this year, though, with COVID, a lot more emphasis on the streaming end of that. And, Jeff Keighley's doing his one night live opening event again, that he always does the past couple of years. So I think a lot of people expected, hey, this is an all digital event. Microsoft's probably going to do something. Maybe we get a state of play from Sony around then, yada, yada. So I don't think anybody's really, thrown off by this, but kind of set the stage a little bit. Joe Scrubbles over at IGN has a really good article just kind of setting the stage on what we can expect, what Microsoft kind of told us. So let's jump into it. As always, link in the description for the article. Go give Joe a click over there at IGN. All the guys over there and all the articles we do. Everyone does great work. So go over there, support your journalists, yada, yada. You know what I mean. Xbox has confirmed that it will hold a Gamescom stream on August 24th, showing off, quote, new looks at upcoming games. Beginning at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK, that's 3 a.m. EST on August 25th. The showcase sounds as though it will focus on already announced titles and arrives the day before Gamescom officially opens with the one-night live showcase on August 25th. You can tune into all of Gamescom with IGN over on their website, obviously. An Xbox blog post says that the show will include, quote, an in-depth updates from some of our previously announced Xbox Game Studios titles alongside some of our third-party partners, including some of the incredible titles coming to Xbox this holiday, upcoming releases to our monthly subscription service, Xbox Game Pass, and much more. Xbox also said that it will hold a digital fan fest during Gamescom with more details to follow on that. The company also will be running a sale through Gamescom running through August 25th to the 27th, offering up to 75% off select titles. So, like I said, I think we all kind of expected Microsoft to have some kind of presence at Gamescom this year from a digital standpoint, given obviously how easy it is to reach your audience without having to worry about doing an in-person event, right now. And, still the first year of their new consoles on the market. Got to push those things, got to get sales. So it made a lot of sense. But I think, setting expectations properly for this was good of Microsoft. I think that's always the biggest thing that people with digital events, whether it's, obviously E3, whether it's Nintendo Directs, now Sony State of Plays, things like that, that I think people sometimes, Nintendo Directs are always the worst. Offensive ones, I guess, to say with it, not offensive, and you get what I mean. But they're the worst ones to come out with. Every Nintendo Direct is going to be the biggest one that year. We're getting Breath of the Wild 2, and granted that's already been announced, but Breath of the Wild 2, Super Mario Odyssey 2. We're getting we're getting Metroid Prime 4's release date. We're getting this and that. We're getting like a laundry list, a new F-Zero, Star Fox racing game, like all these things that people are like the perfect Nintendo Direct every single time. That I think having, and Nintendo doesn't help themselves either. They like to not really, they've been getting better at it, but where they'll say, we're going to be doing a half-hour Direct talking about previously announced games or things like kind of like what Microsoft did this time around, but we're much more, they don't necessarily help their cause either, because they will, hey, we're going to talk about new Nintendo Switch games, or hey, we're going to talk about this and that. And granted, how open can you be about that stuff? But I do think Microsoft did a good job at setting expectations, saying, hey, we're going to touch on previously, you're going to get, more in-depth looks at, additional or previously announced, I should say, first party titles. Hey, we're going to get a look at potentially a Forza. Hey, we're going to potentially get a look at a Halo or whatever, like those games that are already announced, we're going to get a look at. Plus, hey, we're going to get a new look at some third party titles, or even from what I hear, some potentially a, third party announcement and things like that. That it's going to be more, hey, more, I think, on the lines of a magazine like a magazine show kind of thing, if that makes any sense. But I think it's funny though because Gamescom is such a bigger event, like I said, than E3 in terms of number of people who usually are there. But given that it's European focused, it doesn't pull those mass stateside numbers that E3 did, I should say. So it makes sense that this is a little more peeled back of an event, giving us, updates on previously announced games, deep dives, things like that. So, Mike, I guess what I'm asking, what are you hoping to see from Microsoft at this Gamescom event, at this showcase at Gamescom, knowing what we know? Would it be completely shocking to potentially get, hell, Halo Infinite's release date? It's technically a previously announced first-party title that's coming out right around the corner. Or is that something that, maybe both Microsoft and 343 want to hold on to a bit longer to maybe do their own specific Halo-focused showcase or something? But hey, maybe we get new flighting information this time around? Stuff like that, maybe another dev diary on Hellblade 2, given that, hey, they're a UK studio, we're in Europe, that makes sense. The audience may have some crossover there. What should we expect to potentially see with an event of this caliber, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear when Halo Infinite when they were planning on releasing that game. But that's pretty much like I have a better chance at winning the Powerball or sleeping with Scarlett Johansson than that has of happening. It's just not realistic because part of me is like to the point where I don't even know that. I don't know that they even know when the game's going to be released. First and foremost, I don't believe they know exactly the date. They'll probably have something in mind, but realistically, we're much more likely to get more flighting information, which I think is what we'll get. We'll learn when the next flight's going to be, what it's going to be, things of that nature, which I think is somewhat acceptable at this point. I just don't know that the game's going to release. I mean, again, we've had this talk millions of times. I don't believe the game's coming out this year. I won't believe it till I play it. Outside of that, what to expect? I would think having some crossover with it being a European show makes a lot of sense with Hellblade. You're going to get information on that. But I think most importantly, what you're going to get information on is just more updates on games like, what Rare's working on, the new Fable game. You're going to get stuff like that. Probably not footage or anything. You might get something from Fable that's like basically, the super cool like cutscenes or whatever, where it's like not even in the engine. It's just video kind of exposing.
Hey, here's a cinematic.
Yeah, like what's coming down the pipe. I think those are more realistic expectations than any like cut and dry news. Now, I wouldn't be mad to hear when Halo Infinite's going to release, but I just know, realistically speaking, that's not. Let's just say, like,
let me ask you this. I want your honest opinion on this, and we don't have to go into this big, long, extended talk on it, but would you be upset or would you be hesitant? How would you feel if, say, and it doesn't have to be the Gamescom event, it could be tomorrow, it could be a month beforehand, they come out and say, hey, Halo Infinite's launching on 11/11 or 11/17 or whatever. You're like, hey, it's coming out. It's for sure coming out this year on November 17th, for sure. Would you be upset at hearing that? Like, would you be hesitant at the quality of the game because of that? Like, do you believe this game needs to be delayed?
I don't think necessarily that the game needs to be delayed because there's a potential that
if that makes any sense. You get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, here's a perfectly feasible situation in my head, and this is coming from someone who has little to no faith in 343 as a company for a million different reasons, because they've given me no reason to trust them. I could see them saying that Halo Infinite will be released on one of those days in November, but it's only going to be the campaign that you pay for. And then I would expect them to hold multiplayer for like another 6 months and wait to see like what sales are like from the campaign. Like that's 100% in the ballpark. And people listening might think, oh, he's just a hater, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, really think about what 343 did. Think about how they released MCC. Think about all the other shit that they've done in the past. Like, do you really think that it's beyond them to do something that cynical and that crazy? Like, absolutely not. In fact, if Halo Infinite is released, if the date of it is released, or if that information is made public during Gamescom, it's 100% going to be the campaign only if multiplayer is not ready.
Mhm.
Like, that's not even crazy to think about, in my opinion. That's just like, that would almost be standard operating procedure for 343 at this point in time.
See,
And I'm not trying to be a dick, but it's just like, think about it. Like, if they're not going to make money from the multiplayer for a game that they've spent how much money on, spent 6 years on, they're not going to make any money off the multiplayer unless it's microtransaction. And if it's not ready, it's not ready. But if the campaign's ready and they can recoup some of their money, that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. No, and I mean, you and I are both I think, in alignment of like, we have a very, and Adam too, obviously, and I'm sure a lot of Halo fans, obviously, like, we love multiplayer, and you so much more, you know, and don't get me wrong, I have such a soft space in my heart for Halo multiplayer, and I'll always love it, but I think, you know, more than some people, do truly love the Halo narrative and the campaign, and want those to legitimately do well. Like, am I wrong? Like, outside of obviously like 4 and 5 being what they were, even though 4 wasn't as bad, I think, as people said, it just was stylistically a different direction that I think threw a lot of people off, but 5 being what it was. But point being, though, I think people have such and especially us, I think, too, speaking, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but have a love and appreciation for the lore and what this narrative has told for so many years that, you know I wouldn't be like totally upset if they're like, hey, you know, campaign's dropping on, let's see what it would be, let's say November 12th or November 5th or whatever, and multiplayer's coming 2 weeks later. Or, hey, we're having it set up that multiplayer's coming the 26th, like Thanksgiving weekend. Like Black Friday, you're going to be able to play Halo Infinite multiplayer all weekend. Like, I personally wouldn't be so upset about that. But at the same time, too, like, I get why people would be upset about that. Or if it begs the question of, okay, well, if you're going to release that, yeah, I get you got to recoup money. But at what point is, hey, we wanted to make the 20th anniversary of Halo. We wanted to make it that release date. We wanted to hit that, you know, our internal, you know, deadline. We wanted to hit of that. It didn't work. It's just not going to work for the complete, you know, one portion's done, the other portion isn't. Okay, you know, let's look to bump this to February. Like, if we need that time. And 2 months is only 2 months, but 2 months, a lot can happen. Famously, you hear about with I believe it was The Last of Us, where Naughty Dog says that, like, they had that initial, I think it was like a 1.5, 2 month delay, something like that, that game truly became they believe truly became the game that it was, thanks to those 2 weeks, or those, you know, 1.5 months or whatever it was. That little extra time that it needed, it became the game that people fucking adore. So, and is one of the most important games in modern video game history that, you know, actually it needed that, and it was worth it. And 343 is on the same budget level. I mean, it's more than I would, we're talking about. They would have
a bigger budget.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a video game that could potentially, at the end of the day, be one of the most expensive video games developed of all time. At this point now, you've already spent X amount of money. I get the idea, hey, we got to get this out, yada, yada. But dude, you already spent $60 million. What's the difference between 60 million and 61? Like, let's be real. We're talking millions of dollars. You're already spending that. Microsoft, they're in the business of tech and making money, and they have for a long time, and they have they're like Nintendo. In respectively, you know, within their, you know, financial brackets, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like, Microsoft has stupid cash and assets. Like, if they can go and just straight up like write the check to acquire ZeniMax and Bethesda for $7.5 billion, I think they're all right. Like, they're going to be all right if they could handle an extra $1 million to make sure this game comes out as a complete package. I think they're all right. So
yeah, I don't think like, me loving the campaign, like, I wouldn't be mad if that's how the game released, because I feel like with Halo, you're looking at a lot of big media personalities. You're talking about a lot of big streamers are like frothing at the mouth for the release of this game. And I feel like if you had the campaign completely done, you release the campaign and people enjoy that, a lot, and then you say, hey, the multiplayer just isn't where we want it to be. It's not up to our standard. It's going to be a little bit longer. The multiplayer is going to be free to play. There are going to be a lot more eyes and a lot more hands on Halo that have never even played Halo before. You're talking about the whole generation of Fortnite kiddies that like the only game they really know is like Fortnite, and it was free. And you're talking about a lot of exposure and a lot more people. Not saying that it's going to be like bigger than Halo 2 was, because I mean, historically speaking, you're talking about national, like mainstream media coverage for a video game release was like unheard of. The only time national media, mainstream media that is, that really talked about video games is whenever, people were trying to ban video games because of GTA. And you're talking about how big of a release Halo 2 was going to be publicly and everything. And that was, on mainstream media. And Halo Infinite is heading towards that direction, and releasing a free multiplayer game, even if it sucks ass, is like, just because it's free isn't going to save it. People still aren't going to waste their time on it if the game sucks. So I think that's something that 343 is really thinking about and should think about, and that's what everyone else should be thinking about. If campaign's ready to rock and roll, because it's been pretty much the biggest story beats have already been exposed. Like, if that game's ready to go, just release it, because people are only going to leak more and more of it. As shitty as it is with the data mining, like that's the nature of the beast today.
Yeah.
Like, just release it and let the multiplayer be for a little bit, and just make sure the game's good. Like, for how there's going to be a lot of momentum when that game first comes out. Like, don't waste it by releasing something that sucks.
Yeah.
Like, make sure the game's good.
That's going to be my biggest worry with this game, and we'll get back on track. We'll get the train back on the tracks here after a second. But
I mean, you're talking about historically the most important franchise in Xbox's history.
Oh my God, there's no
bar none.
No matter what game, no matter what franchise ever comes out within Microsoft, moving forward, we could have Perfect Dark come out and be the next Last of Us, or the next Uncharted, or the next Mario, or what. That's a jump too far, but you get what I mean. Like, they could have anything come out and be this next big franchise. Nothing ever will be as big as Halo was, is, and will be, because that is their tentpole franchise. It's the most important franchise they have and ever will have, period.
The way I look at it, and people might say I'm crazy, but I'm going out on a limb. I'm not even going out on a limb, because I believe it wholeheartedly with everything in my body, that Halo as a franchise to Microsoft, to Xbox specifically under the Microsoft tentpole, is 100% the most important game series to a gaming company of all time. And I'm not talking game developers. I'm talking, if you separate Sony, if you separate Microsoft, if you separate Nintendo, Halo is 100% the most important franchise to a game, like to a system or a gaming company's history, bar none. And people might say, well, Mario's more important than Halo. Mario might be more important, sure, but without Mario, there's still Zelda.
Right.
Without Zelda, there's still Mario. Without The Last of Us, there's still Uncharted. Without this, there's still that. And that goes with almost every single gaming company out there. But without Halo, look at how bad the Series X did. Look at how bad the Xbox One did. Look at how bad Xbox 360 did. Like, Xbox 360 had Gears of War, and it was a great side piece. It was similar to Zelda's importance to Nintendo, with Mario being the tentpole, or vice versa to some people, if that's the way you wanted to look at it. But with Halo, it is absolutely the most important thing to Xbox, and it's survival. It has to be, and it's just that's the nature of the beast. But like, that's why I'm saying, like, if the multiplayer isn't up to snuff, but the campaign's ready to go, who cares if you have to wait a little bit for the multiplayer? Because this is it. There's no more like, oh, like a new Mario game's going to come out. And even though the last 3 Marios sucked, people will give Mario another chance. Like, people have given Halo enough chances, myself included. And I'm someone who has played every single campaign except for 5, because Halo 5 just wasn't a Halo game to me. And I've played so much time into these games that, like, I would be willing to give Zelda or Mario or any other game another chance, no matter how many times they bit me, especially with Mario and Zelda.
Mhm.
But Halo's just to the point where I don't have enough trust in 343 as a company, and I don't think the franchise can come back from another disaster.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I mean, that's it. I want to say it is what it is. Like, it's just we're at the point now where, yeah, I mean, this is a game now that, of course, it needs to perform. It needs to. I know Phil Spencer's already on the record, and I totally agree that Halo will be here no matter what at the end of the day. It'll still be Microsoft's most important franchise. It will still get huge releases. It'll still do huge numbers. It just is what it is. It will always have some level of success. But we've seen what Halo true success with this game or this franchise is. We've seen it, and we've seen it for a solid decade. What this game really, or this franchise, I should say, really, really, really could do with the success of it. Like when it has actual wind in its sails. And that's, I was saying earlier, or getting ready to say earlier, one of my biggest fears is this game's going to have a false sense of security with it, where it comes out and it is going to be hot in the streets for 2 to 4 weeks, where people are going to be playing this game. It's going to be hot. People are
It'll probably be number 1 on Twitch for at least a week, like when it first comes out.
100%. Yeah, it's going to be the next fucking big thing. Like, it's going to be the next game that people jump into with all their buddies, and they're going to be like, this is great, this is yada yada. If it's anything like we've seen, obviously, with the test flight. So, but my thing is that I don't want Microsoft and Halo or 343 to kind of lean on that and be like, oh yeah, I want it to, there's got to be momentum with it. You got to keep with the momentum. You got to keep rolling. You got to keep offering things with this series. And that's kind of my biggest fear with it. But anyways, I didn't mean to completely derail this conversation, but Gamescom, kind of getting back to that. I wouldn't be completely shocked if we did see, hey, here's new info on flighting. Hey, here's a new, update. We'll probably see definitely a deeper dive into Forza. We're definitely going to see, a deeper, I would imagine, look at maybe a 12 minutes, even though that's getting ready to come out next week. Kind of this recap on things that are coming. And I'm sure we'll get, hey, here's the next update with Grounded. Hey, here's the next update with, some of their live service games. But there's going to be one bigger thing, a bigger update to one of their titles. I'd love it to be Halo, because I think that they need to start kind of ramping this up a little bit, in terms of communication on, hey, it's, and granted, they know for sure it's coming out X, X, Y, and Z date or range of dates, but we need to start building to that a little bit. I think at this point, a little bit more so than what we've seen so far. But at the same time, too, I wouldn't be shocked if we, by any means, if we didn't see it there. If they held it to say, hey, we want to do Microsoft's going to promote almost like Nintendo Direct style, event with Halo Infinite, where we're going in and we're sitting down and we're going to play through the first 10 minutes of the game, and we're going to talk about campaign, actually what's going on in this campaign, and when this game finally releases. So that game completely owns the spotlight. But at the same time, too, they want people to watch the showcase. They got to have something there for people to get hyped around to tune in to see it. So it'll be interesting. I think we're going to see something. Is it Halo Infinite level something? We'll see. But who knows? Anyways, Mike, let's move on to our next news article. Jesse McCree, Diablo 4's director, is no longer at Blizzard. So this comes from Ethan Gotch over at Kotaku, talking more Blizzard, the story that keeps unfortunately evolving and more horrible shit keeps coming out. Now Diablo 4's director out the door. So, like I said, comes from Ethan Gotch over at Kotaku. As always, link in the description. Diablo 4 game director Luis Barraga, lead designer Jesse McCree, and World of Warcraft designer Jonathan LeCraft were let go from Blizzard on Wednesday, two sources with knowledge of the move told Kotaku. The news was delivered to developmental teams today, but has not yet been officially announced. A source confirmed to Kotaku that the three developers' names are no longer visible in Blizzard's internal directory or Slack. Activision Blizzard did not immediately return a request for comment. Then they also provided an update to it. A spokesperson for Activision Blizzard confirmed the departures in an email. Quote, "We can confirm Luis Baraga, Jesse McCree, and Jonathan LeCraft are no longer with the company," they wrote. "We have a deep, talented roster of developers already in place, and new leaders have been assigned where appropriate. We are confident in our ability to continue progress, delivering amazing experiences to our players, and move forward to ensure a safe, productive work environment for all." One source who learned of the news said Activision Blizzard did not give a reason for the departures, but they come as a company reckons with a California lawsuit alleging widespread sexual harassment and discrimination at the Overwatch and Call of Duty publisher. Jesse McCree, the namesake for Overwatch's beloved cowboy fighter, and most recently a designer in Diablo 4, was one of several current and former Blizzard developers who appeared in an image of a BlizzCon 2013, quote, Cosby suite obtained by Kotaku. The suite contained booze and a giant portrait of Bill Cosby and reportedly belonged to World of Warcraft developer Alex Afrabazi. Afrabazi is one of the few people who were called out by name in California's lawsuit, which accuses him of sexually harassing and groping female coworkers. Bloomberg reported that the nickname for the suite began as a joke about ugly carpeting and predated the sexual assault allegations about Bill Cosby becoming widely publicized, though some Blizzard sources have disputed that origin story. Two former Blizzard employees told Kotaku that the suite's reputation had always been menacing because of Afrabazi's behavior. Afrabazi's related references have since been removed from World of Warcraft, though there's no word yet on whether or not Overwatch and its gunslinger will see any changes in the light of the latest lawsuits. Jonathan LeCraft and Corey Stockton, currently a lead designer game designer at Blizzard, were also pictured in the suite. Two sources confirmed to Kotaku that Stockton was put on leave last week, but appears to remain with the company. Luis Baraga has been at Blizzard since 2006, and as game director has been one of the faces of Diablo 4 since it was initially revealed. The game is still deep in development and doesn't yet have a release date. Last year, veteran game developer Rod Ferguson announced he was leaving Microsoft and Gears 5 Studio, the coalition, to join Blizzard and oversee the entire Diablo franchise. So, part of me wants to preface this by saying, man, I hate that we have to keep bringing up the story yet again, because I like to think that video games are an escape for so many people. Same with, talking about them, listening to podcasts like this. That this is a place people go to turn their brain off and just, the crux of our podcast has always been, and you could listen to it in, I think, episode 1 or 2, we even talk about it, that we want this podcast to be the feeling of you and your buddies sitting around playing couch co-op and just bullshitting about games, and you being the third, in this situation, third chair, that's there playing with us. So we want this to be an escape for people. But I would feel that would, be a disservice to the victims that this affects. So I'm going to continue, making sure this is brought up as long as we need to. But aside from the potentially horrendous things that keep coming out about Blizzard, turning it to games for a second, we're now really starting to see it affect the development side of these games, specifically big tentpole franchises like Diablo and its next mainline release in Diablo 4. So obviously the games are still secondary to the true story going on. Fuck game development for right now. We're talking, obviously people are much more focused, and rightfully so, on the horrible shit that is going on from a personnel standpoint with Blizzard. But looking at the games for a second, while we continue to talk about that, what does this say for the state of Diablo 4? Obviously, the franchise was, I want to say, at an interesting point already with, the initial mixed reception of Diablo 3 from long-term fans. But as the years went on, Blizzard seemingly kind of recommitted to the franchise and its roots over the past handful of years. Diablo 3 really turned around. A lot of people love that game now, but at the same time, do you think that this project, after being in development for so long and being something that by the time we see it, it's going to be a 10-year gap between Diablo releases, I'm sure, do you think this project has the ability to remain focused after yet another major staffing departure, specifically this time somebody who is in a lead design role?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time for all this. Not just like an interesting time for all this to come out as far as Jesse McCree leaving the company and everything. It's obviously warranted. The behaviors that went on behind closed doors and was abhorrent to say the least. But I will say that I never really gave Diablo 3 a super fair shake after my initial playthrough. I know you, me, and Adam tried to play recently, and it just kind of never. Diablo 3 was never a game that like sunk in for me, and maybe it was because like I had unfair expectations after how good Diablo 2 was and how much I really loved that game.
I think it almost had the Skyrim syndrome a little bit.
Yeah.
I definitely
like,
think so.
Where it's like it was good, but it's not really what I wanted per se. And other people might like it and say, well, you're an idiot, and that's okay. You're allowed to think that of me. But I will say Diablo 4 kind of gave me a little bit of hope because, quite frankly, I was happy that they were coming out with D2 Resurrected. From what it looked like from the technical alpha I got to see, not play, lol, that it did look like it was getting back to Diablo 2's roots. And it really did a great job at not taking too many creative freedoms, but, improving it in a lot of different ways. It's just going to make the gameplay overall better because Diablo 2 did age pretty horribly. Now, the game came out in like 99, 2001 for LOD, so rightfully so that it aged pretty poorly, but newer people or younger players don't really have a reason to give Diablo 2 a chance currently, and understandably so. It does look really rough. But I was, hopeful for D4, not so much because of Jesse McCree, but just because I felt like after what they did in D3, I felt like you could have combined a lot of stuff that happened in Diablo 3 and combine it with a lot of the stuff that you had in D2, and you would have had an overall pretty good game, which is ultimately what I'm hoping Bethesda's doing with Elder Scrolls 6. I'm hoping it takes a lot of the good stuff that Skyrim did, a lot of the great stuff that Oblivion did, and a lot of the good stuff that Morrowind did, and I hope it combines all of them, and I hope D4 was the same way. But when you're getting this close to a game's release, not that it was super close, but it's similar. It's a similar feeling as to when 343 lost its creative director, as far as how much can you really change in this game at this stage and benefit from it. Like, is there going to be addition by subtraction per se? I don't know. Maybe. Whether or not it's going to be good for the game is really maybe 15th or 16th out of the most important part of the game development at this point in time. Blizzard has a responsibility to try to repair its image in a lot of different ways, and moving away from these individuals is step one in fixing the atrocities committed for how many ever years it really went on. I haven't studied the lawsuit really diligently. I've studied it enough to cover it from afar. I haven't been studying it very hard just because there's a lot of other things in my life, and when you hear this kind of negative shit happening somewhere, it's just something that I don't necessarily want to brush over or just forget about, but it's just something that whenever all the eggs or all the cards are shown, I'm going to hear about it and people are going to talk about it for a long time. So I'll wait until all the news comes out and then I'll do my due diligence at that point in time. But what matters from the game standpoint, if Diablo 4 gets canceled, that would obviously be really shitty because there's a lot of other people that are working on this that aren't named Jesse McCree that deserve to have their art shown. But at the same time, like, I can't really say that they should hang on to Jesse McCree to at least finish the game, because then you firing him afterwards is just lip service. You holding him accountable right now is what's important. And all things considered, that's what's most important. The game is going to be okay. Whatever they were working on going forward, they can pretty much do without Jesse being there, in my opinion. I haven't been there for game development, and I feel like I say that every show, so it's hard for me to say what's right. But I mean, it's the nature of game development. You
Mhm.
had a guy that was a scumbag heading your studio, making these games. You kind of got to take your licks, and they'll figure out where to go from here. There's other people at the studio that have worked on games for a long time and worked on Diablo, and they're gonna be okay. It's just at this point, it matters less if Blizzard's okay and more if the victims are okay.
Mhm.
And I just hope at the end of it all, the game winds up being good, because at the same token, again, there's other people that aren't named Jesse McCree that are looking to either make their mark in game development or have a successful game and show, hey, this is a mechanic that I specifically worked on. And if they don't want to work at Blizzard anymore after this, it's important that they have a little bit of like a resume worked up that it's like, hey, this is what I can actually do for you.
Mhm.
This, I'm not defined by working at Blizzard. This is what I did. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh no, 100%. I totally agree. It's gonna be. You're right. I mean, it's right now. Game development, like I said, is completely secondary to what's going on at Blizzard. They're more, and rightfully so, more worried about everything else that's going on with repairing, obviously, their image, but more importantly, taking care and trying to fix some of these horrible wrongs that have been made, if there isn't a way to fix them. But focusing on that and focusing on the victims, and making sure there's actual, true, systematic changes, and breaking the wheel and building it back up again. But this does put a very interesting perspective on this game, because there are, I'm sure, still, I mean, there's good people still working on this game, putting their heart and soul. This is still a place where people, the loud minority of shitheads who were, horrible people or did horrible things, they're the ones making all this noise, when the vast majority of people there are hardworking, beautiful individuals who are, doing things, working on a franchise I'm sure that they love and want to make sure is its best iteration yet, that, are now being affected by yet another leadership change because of shitty things that have happened, that they had no part in, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's,
I feel like that's the biggest point I was trying to make by that long-winded spiel,
mhm,
is for those individuals that are still at the development studio and still working,
mhm,
to like hope that Blizzard fails as a company, or to hope that this game sucks ass because Jesse McCree was the big dog on it, is like ignoring the fact that there are so many other people that are being affected by this now, that it's
mhm,
just, I feel like, while it's justified, and it's justified to feel that way, I feel shitty saying that, because at the end of the day, like you said, there's just other people that are there that are being affected by this now, and they're not the people that were in the Cosby suites sexually harassing people and just being pieces of shit in general. This is their life's work too, and everything that they've worked so hard on to really release, and now it's in jeopardy. Maybe not so much in jeopardy, but it's has a big question mark on it because of other people just being straight up shit cans.
right.
And that's shitty. And I don't want anybody to to lose their job, or I don't want this game to suck ass now because Jesse McCree was fired. I want the game to succeed, maybe more so because he's gone. Like, I want this game to be like, look, we don't need these people so much as, people might have thought. But again, a flip side to that coin is like, if the game flops and sucks ass, there's going to be plenty of people out there that are shitty fucking people, borderline misogynists, that are like, look, they let this Me Too shit and they let all this other garbage that they couldn't even prove, like,
Mhm.
whether they can or not, people are so opinionated and shitty. Like, look what happened to Blizzard, man. All the games that were going to be so good now went down the tubes because of it. And it's just like, that's the kind of shit we don't need in game development. And that's the kind of shit we don't need in society, period, let alone in game development that's so predominantly male as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a shitty situation all around. That the solution seems so clear. Like, and it's and there's a difference. There's a huge difference between, oh, things were different 10 years ago, or, certain things were done a certain way 10 years ago, or certain phrases were said, that aren't acceptable now. And that's for a reason, because people, one, grow up, and also to our society, I'd like to think, grows up and becomes more accepting and more, open-minded, and, tries to evolve in general. And, this is much different than that. This is a much different conversation. This is, like I said, systematically, fundamentally wrong that was enabled. And that was the big thing. There wasn't somebody found out about something and, hey, it wasn't taken care of, or somebody found out something that happened and HR took care of it. And there's one incident every how many years that pops up, or something that it's very rare. But that doesn't seem to be the case enough to where the state of California went and filed a lawsuit against you. Like, this is a systematic, fundamental thing that is wrong with this development, this studio, and from what it seems like, company-wide. So it's I don't want to say it's not that hard to fix, because it is going to be hard to fix, because, like I said, it's systematic. It's at the core of, and it's breaking that core open and rebuilding it back up. But I mean, it's just one of those things that kind of breaks you a little bit, that makes you like, man, this industry that I love so much, this is what comes out of it. And it's just,
especially when myself, and I could feel safe saying, like, you and Adam both, but especially me, like, I was just such a big Blizzard fanboy growing up.
Yeah.
And I played, almost every Blizzard game, and a lot of those tentpole people are named in this. A lot of the people that developed the games that I loved are involved in this. And that's what is another thing that's so concerning to me, is like, a lot of the people that worked on the games that I love the most are the people that were committing these horrific things. And I mean, it's just something that the game development world and the video game world is going to be reeling from for a long time. And I know people might be tired about hearing about it. You said we want this podcast to be somewhere that people can kind of disconnect from life, but some things are bigger than life and this in general, where it's like, we would be I feel like safe in saying that we'd be part of the problem if we didn't talk about this.
100%.
You're talking about, like, yeah, at the end of the day, do I like to talk about this kind of stuff? No one likes to do it. In fact, it makes me really sad, and it makes me really upset that we even have to talk about this at all, because I would much rather spend we take our time out of our day, and some people are going to be like, oh, well, you eventually want to make money out of it. Whenever we started this podcast, it was never about, none of us ever thought we're going to make money off of this. Would that be cool? Fuck yeah. Like, it'd be awesome if I could do this for a living, but it's a straight up fucking passion project.
Yep.
I don't want to have to spend my free time that I take out of my day away from my girlfriend, away from other things that I could be doing, want to be doing. Like, at the end of the day, I want to do this, but I don't want to be talking about fucking scumbags that treat women like this. I don't want to, but we have to. We're technically media. To keep media integrity, I feel like this is part of it. Like, you have to be integrity driven when you do things like this, and this is part of it. And unfortunately, it's part of it. And I hope it's never part of it again, but we have to talk about it. And I'm sorry for listeners that don't want to hear about it, but it is what it is. Like,
tough
this
shit.
is part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it like that, tough shit, because I'm like you, and I totally second everything you say there. I mean, I may not have formally gone to journalism school. I've always had a passion for writing and journalism and covering stories and, being involved in telling the stories of things. I know about journalistic integrity, and I know that even just as a fun podcast that I do that still touches on the news and topics within gaming, I feel an obligation to talk about these things and continue to talk about these things and make it apparent and talk about when I fuck up and talk about when you fuck up and talk about when anybody fucks up. And like, it's not cancel culture there is a cancel culture subset that I think is bullshit, that is sometimes out for the wrong reasons, but I like accountability culture. And I think this is what we're talking about with that. This is the fight that we need to actually tackle. And I will continue to boast accountability culture on this podcast. I know you will too. And it's just, I don't think anything else needs to be said about it, because you said it fucking perfectly with that we do, I feel, have an obligation when things come out to talk about this stuff. As much as I love video games and as much as I have a dying passion for this industry, some things are bigger than, video games. And it just so happens the Venn diagram crosses on this one, and it's fucking horseshit that it does. And we need to make sure that people know about the horseshit that's going on with it. So.
And when all the cards are laid out and the lawsuit comes out and all the information that they have or they're working on gaining proof of, whenever that all comes out, we're going to be here and we're going to also talk about that then. But I feel safe in kind of assuming, excuse me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm not here to tell the victims' stories. I'm not here to say that the victims are full of shit. And I'm never going to do that, even if I was working at a newspaper. No matter what I was doing in my life, anytime I'm covering anything, I'm not going to try to pretend or tell the victim stories. It's theirs to tell. So if they come into court and they talk about the things that they experienced, at that point in time, I'll relay you. I'll give you the cliff notes. I'll do all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to sit here and insinuate things. I'm not going to, make the story larger than it is. I'm simply going to give you the facts that we're given, and that's it. And we're going to keep it moving. I don't give very much opinion on the happenings at Blizzard as far as like what I think is right and what I think is wrong. I mean, I've given you what I think is wrong, but we haven't used anything from the case that's like saying this is right, this is wrong. Like, we're going to say what's wrong based on society. But I'm not going to pretend to know what the victims feel like. I'm not going to pretend to know what the people who committed these atrocities feel like, because their opinion or what they feel like doesn't much matter to me in this opinion or in this point in time. And, we'll go forward from there. And when more comes out about it. And I just hope that for your sake as a listener and for our sake as the people who cover it, but more importantly, the victim's sake, that we don't have to talk about this shit ever again after this.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it because old boy society, air quotes, are going to be old boy society, air quotes, and we're going to have to hold them accountable, and it just is what it is.
Right. I totally agree. So this won't be the last time we talk about it, shocker, because I feel like more and more stuff's going to come out, and just in general, these kind of topics we're not going to continue to shy away from by any means. So no, I thought that was perfectly put, Mike. Anyways, though, let's move on to talk about something a little more positive. Let's end the bulk of the show on a positive note. Dead Space, franchise, really, I should say, that I love, that I'm super excited to see come back, and a lot of people are excited to see come back with this pseudo remake, or however you want to say it. Jeff Grubb over at VentureBeat says that it's going to potentially launch in late 2020 if everything goes to plan. This, of course, like I said, from Jeff Grubb over at VentureBeat, who we end up pulling from a lot. So go over there, link in the description, go over there, give Jeff a click, cover his work. He's really good. So let's dive into it. Electronic Arts is really making that Dead Space game that fans wanted. The game is going simply by the name Dead Space, and as I previously reported, that represents developer EA Motive's desire to remake the original game while also rebooting the franchise as a whole. And fans should get the chance to experience the results of those efforts when Dead Space launches in fall of 2022, according to sources familiar with development. This means the game is a little bit more than a year away. Of course, in the tumultuous games industry, target dates slip frequently, and it's important to note that EA has not yet publicly stated or confirmed release timing for Dead Space. I reached out to EA for comment, and a spokesperson for the publisher provided the following statement, quote, "We haven't shared a release date for the game, and we don't have any comment based on the current rumors and speculation, but we're glad people are excited for the game." But internally, EA is expecting to launch Dead Space during its fiscal 2023 year. So we won't see that in its financial guidance until early next year. but by then, we will likely have heard more from the publisher about this game. The company does have some intention to reveal more of Dead Space before the end of 2021. That could take form of a trailer dropping on the company's YouTube page, or maybe it's another candidate to show up at the Game Awards in December. At that time, it's possible EA could give a release date, although that might go against current trends. Many publishers are keeping final release dates quiet until much later in the marketing cycle. This is due to the pandemic making a tough business even more uncertain. But it's also because publishers are seeing little downside as games continue to sell even if customers have to wait to the last minute for release specifics. For example, Nintendo didn't announce Mario Golf Super Rush, until February, and it sold more than 1.3 million copies in 5 days in June. So, I don't think anyone was necessarily expecting Dead Space to surprisingly drop this year or early next year or whatever. Given a ton of different factors, including obviously the pandemic. And for the fact this project's scope really is bigger than people are giving credit for, I think, with it being one continuous shot and being very much almost EA's version of the God of War reboot that so many people want for so many different franchises. But even thinking positively about this, I honestly think 2022 could even be a stretch depending on how long Motive really has been working on this game, especially if you throw the Delta variant that's in the mix now, and, we could see issues arise again. So nonetheless, though, how do you feel with a targeted 2022 release date, Mike? Does that still instill confidence in you that EA Motive seems to have this game on track as much as they seem to?
I mean, it's funny. I just feel like in a universe where literally every single game is getting delayed, like, how are you, like, I get it, like, it might be to raise some hype or whatever you want to call it, but like, there's just no way, right, that this game's going to release on time, and that's air quotes around the phrase time. Like, there's just no way, right? How can you actually believe that a game's going to release on time at this point in time in the world? Because again, we talked about it a few weeks ago. I feel like I'd say this every week, but like, I'd rather game devs not even put a freaking date on it. Like, just don't even bother. Just say it's going to come out sometime in late 2020 or 2022 and move on. Like, it is what it is. Things happen. I get it. But like, I just don't get the reason to put constraints on yourself when, like, all that can happen is you just disappoint fans. Really, like, think about it. If you say it's going to come out in October 2022, and then October 2022 comes, you say, oh, well, the game's just not ready yet, we're going to delay it. What good does that do? Like, it just doesn't, there's no benefit to it. And that's what I don't understand, like, game development studios still doing this thing with these release dates. Like, just simply say, like, just put a random, like, time frame on it, fall or holiday 2022. And then once you get closer, if the game's actually ready in October and that was your original release date time, then say that's when it's coming out. And then guess what? You hit your goal, but the rest of society doesn't know you really came up, like, you actually got it out earlier than you told them. And that's only going to be a benefit. But that's, like, something that I don't understand from a marketing standpoint that, like, just seems so simple to me. But for whatever reason, it seems like game dev studios are just really bad at it.
Right. No, and it seems like that's becoming more and more of a thing.
Like, from a consumer standpoint, it sucks when companies like, under promise and over deliver, because, like, it feels like they're gaming you. But, like, they're gaming you. Under promise and over deliver. It's simple. Like, instead of over promising and under delivering, like, that doesn't do anyone any good.
Right. Oh, 100%. So I'm right there with you. I'm curious to see what kind of just comes from all of this, and where the next year of gaming really in general with development goes, and what this kind of looks like, long term, whenever we look at just really, like, communication from game devs or publishers, I guess I should more say, the publishing end to fans on when they should expect these games, to be out. Like, to me, it's I'm in the camp more so of, and I've kind of, especially now we're talking more, in pandemic as we head towards hopefully post-pandemic, that I'm more in the camp of, okay, with how frequently things change, hold on to a date. That's all right. Keep updating people, but just say, hey, we're getting closer to that target date that we have. We're not ready to talk about it yet, but we're moving forward. And then people could set their expectations. Like we can kind of see like, okay, cool. You know, it's coming. Like it's coming, but we don't have to worry about this fervor that's around, oh, this date. I'm starting to take work off. I'm starting to do this. It just gives people a much better, it just, playing this game one day to the next isn't going to necessarily make you a millionaire or anything like that. Like it's a game. It's coming. You're going to get to play it. You know, I'd rather make sure these teams get the appropriate amount of time to be able to make sure the game's in the best possible state so that I have a better time while also making sure it's a solidified date when it comes out. Like it just, and I know we're talking about, you know, a billion dollar industry, and there's, you know, publishers who want more and more money and things like that. But you know what? There's a middle ground here that I think could help a lot of people and a lot of, you know, studios make better games at the end of the day. So it's going to be interesting as we kind of move forward into this next wave of game development and communication and everything like that. So I digress though. Mike, let's head into party chat before we wrap up this episode. This week, if you're new to the show, party chat's where we propose one question at the end of each week's show that we want to just discuss. Could be as simple as what's your favorite story beat in a game, or what you've been playing during the pandemic, or it could be a little more, you know, in depth as to why the negative stigma around gaming still exists, or, you know, what games can help mental health, you know, approach mental health within this industry and things like that. And, you know, after answering it ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses to the question over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, or you could write in via email at bonusaccessory@gmail.com. And we'll read some of the responses the following week. Last week's question, do you see Microsoft maintaining their commitment? To PC gaming long-term, or will it fizzle out as it did with games for Windows Live? And Xavier Reach 866 on Twitter said, yes, it will be long-term as long as PC gaming continues to be more and more common gaming outlets for people. So, Mike, this week's question, do you see Microsoft landing a deal with a major third-party publisher to release a major title, like a Battlefield, Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, etc., day one on Game Pass within the next year?
I mean, yeah, if they want to reach into their big enough pockets, you know, they're doing it with Back for Blood, and Turtle Rock was concerned about how much they're going to make, but Microsoft's going to pay them. If Microsoft's willing to pay a company, you know, how much ever they agree on, then yeah, that'll happen. If they're not willing to reach into those Bill Gates pockets, then no, it won't. Mm-hmm. But the thing I want to talk about with this party chat, and I promise, like, I know I've been a little derail-y on this show. It's been a rough day. I've been derailing it. But where has not Spider-Man 16 been?
Dude, I know he's been kind of like, I haven't seen him.
He's been a ghost, man. I just hope he's okay.
I do too. I'm sure he's listening one day. Hopefully he'll make his return to the show, but we can only hope. Anyways, though, I think I agree with you, where it's eventually there's going to come a time where if Microsoft sees that fit to spend that amount of money to get one game on their day one, like a Battlefield, like a Call of Duty. I was shocked actually Battlefield 2042 wasn't a day one Game Pass game. I was thinking that probably would have been the case, but alas, it wasn't. You know, I think that if they see the value in it to get a Call of Duty, to get an Assassin's Creed, I think, if anything, it is within the next year that we see that first big domino, almost like crossplay. Like, all we needed really was for Call of Duty to really do it, or Fortnite to push it. Like, then you see just so many, all the dominoes start to go and fall and fall and fall. And so now it's almost it's almost weird not to see crossplay involved in some fashion with a multiplayer game. So it's more so to that I think once we see this first one, and if we do see it in the next year, which I do think we will, you know, I think that's a domino effect to where we see eventually Microsoft start really investing in it. So I'm really curious to see where it kind of goes within the next year. Obviously, proposing the question, I'm interested in it, but yeah, we'll have to see. I think we will, though. I definitely think we will. So, Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet? Talk about all we talked about. Halo Infinite, of course, we talked a long time about, but Gamescom, all the horrible shit that's going on in Blizzard still, Dead Space, all the stuff we talked about this week. Where can people find you on the internet to talk about it?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. And you can find me on Twitch at Barry Huthole. MP _ Toy Soldier. I've actually been streaming. I pulled a double duty the other day. I was playing some Valorant. You can find me on Twitch. I've been playing Valorant on stream because I'm doing I'm just trying to get to Immortal right now. I'm like Diamond 3. I was one game away from Immortal and then lost. And now I'm Diamond 3, about 60 RR points. So I'm really close to getting Immortal and being in the top 1% of players on Valorant. But I think tonight I'm actually going to fire the stream up when we're playing Back for Blood. So you can find us, me, Adam, Travis. You can find the Gamecast squad streaming together. Not really together, but I'll be playing with them. And you can find me playing a variety of games, and especially once Halo Infinite comes out, I'll be playing that. But so come hang out on there too.
Yeet, of course. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Traveless, on most internet platforms, including at Traveless _ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS _. You could also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Traveless _ same as Twitter. And you want to play some video games with me, you can do so over on Xbox Live at just regular old Traveless. That's TRAVLESS, no underscore. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, where I tell you every week. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. Mike, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors right now, specifically wear a mask if you can, please. Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.